Okay, hello everyone. It's now 2 o'clock. Welcome to Creating EHS Compliance Calendars at Work. This is part of our 2025 webinar series focused on regulatory and EHS management trends. I'm Bob Kimball. I'm the Director of Marketing at Dakota Software. I'll be the moderator for today's event, and I'd like to start by thanking everyone for coming. So we decided to cover this topic because we work with EHS leaders who often struggle with managing of compliance programs. Everything from knowing what requirements apply to their facilities to tracking of the compliance activities and everything in between. So over the next 20 minutes, we'll explore why compliance calendars matter, what they should include, and share tips for managing them effectively. We'll conduct a few short polls along the way, and we should conclude with about 5 minutes at the end for any questions that you might have. So please don't hesitate to put them into the Q&A window at any time that pops into your head, and we'll address as many of them as we can at the conclusion. Our speakers today include EHS and technology leaders from Dakota Software. Jay Finnegan has more than 25 years of EHS industry experience, including 12 years as a member of Dakota's compliance services team, where he assists clients with their EHS programs and overall usage of Dakota's tools. Susie Housley has nearly 20 years of EHS experience, including 5 years directly managing environmental compliance programs. She is also product lead overseeing the development of Dakota's new products and initiatives. So I'm now going to go ahead and turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Bob. There we go. So, welcome all. Why does compliance matter? If we are managing our compliance activities well, then the presumption is that we're going to be identifying issues and fixing issues. And if we're identifying and fixing those issues, people aren't going to get hurt. Injuries have very real costs associated with them. Agencies aren't going to find violations, which also have very real costs. And it's hard to do all of that where it's not visible to the workers and actually the communities outside the company. So we have improved culture inside the company. We have improved image outside the company. And then you've always got the things like the management system standards, ISO 14001 and 45001, which actually impose requirements on us to make sure that we understand what our compliance requirements are and that we manage those. The challenge is there are simply so many requirements. We can see in this graph, well over 100,000 action forcing requirements just at the federal level, with thousands of them being revised every year. And the number is just constantly growing. We can see, how many pages the CFR has grown, just the EPA section of it, since 2016, or through the 27 up through 2016. But that's not, it's the federal government's not alone. We also have all the states that are imposing regulations and requirements on us. And there are tons of changes there. We also have the local organizations, communities, with the ordinances, with the permits. There are the management systems. We might have our organizational policies. We might subscribe to different international requirements, other standards, things like responsible care. So there's a lot of requirements out there, and just how do we make sure we understand what we need to do to comply with them all? So there are different strategies. One could be that we're going to rely on the person who preceded us in our role and hope that they just did a good job. Another approach, we can start looking at our operations, and then we can try to take that operation and look through all the requirements and find the ones that apply. Or we can reverse that. We can look at the rules out there and see if, once we know the rule, what operations of ours do those rules apply to. We could hire a consultant to do either that that looking up or looking down approach. We could do a gap assessment internally or hire somebody from the outside to take a look and see what requirements, do we really understand what requirements apply to us, and are we missing any? Or we can use various types of technology to leverage that technology to help us identify the applicable requirements. But once we know those requirements, it turns out that you can actually kind of organize those into these 6 categories: inspections, the monitoring and testing, training, reports, and audits. And then there are some other things like a continuous compliance requirement. Um, but we can kind of categorize those. But what's good about this is we can see that several of these are action forcing. And in addition, when we take a look at those, we've got those first 5 there, training through inspections, that if we can focus on those, and then the requirements that are in that other category, many of them will kind of fall into place, or they're the smallest bucket of items that we may not need to take an affirmative action to address those. Now, in terms of the uh, things that we do want to address, training through audits are either tasks, meaning there's one thing I get to get done, and they typically are fairly infrequent, maybe monthly, quarterly, could be weekly, annually. Whereas an inspection, I've got one thing I got to get done, but it has many questions that I have to answer. And an audit is similar to an inspection in that, again, it has many questions that have to be answered. But because of that time element, I'm going to include, for purposes of this discussion, an audit as a task. So we're going to group those activities into tasks and inspections. So this just gives some very common tasks that are specifically pointed out in the regulations. And many of these should be very familiar to you. Everything from posting your OSHA 300A annual summary data, Tier 2 and TRI reports. We have training, bloodborne pathogens or universal waste, respirator fit testing or testing for coliforms and drinking water, and some compliance audits showing up under both OSHA's PSM and EPA's RMP standards. We similarly have a number of inspections that are spelled out in the regulations. Things like inspecting ladders, industrial trucks, overhead cranes and hoists, portable fire extinguishers. We also have inspections coming in from a stormwater inspection, SPCC inspection, the bulk oil containers, hazardous waste accumulation area, LDAR inspections. So we've got a number of inspections that are literally stated, required in the regulations. But we've also got tasks and inspections coming from elsewhere. They're not in the regulations, but they might be specifically, but they might be incorporated by reference. They might be implicit. It might be a permit requirement. So if you've got a stormwater permit, that's not in the regulations. The regulations say you have to have a permit, but because I have a permit, now I've got inspections and tasks I have to comply with. Or we might have things like an internal audit from the ISO standards, elevator inspections, if we have one of those, which are coming out of a building code, typically not an EHS area. So now that we've got these tasks and inspections, the way to manage those, one of the best ways, the best way is a compliance calendar, because it brings all these pieces together. It helps us manage those requirements. And why do we like the compliance calendar? Because it allows to create these activities in with specific due dates or frequencies. Now, there are different types of requirements. Everything some are very well defined, like a Tier 2 report on March 1st, to an event-driven type of thing, which says if something happens, you have to respond in a given way. But it's not certain that that event's ever going to happen. The verification, the definitive action, those are the items that are the easiest to define and create a task or an inspection on. It becomes much harder to do these event-driven, continuous, and compliance. And the reason I'm pointing that out is we could create activities for each and every requirement, but now our compliance calendar just becomes so administratively burdensome, it's going to be virtually impossible to manage. So we have to choose what are the things that are of importance that we're going to put into that compliance calendar. And this brings up one of the questions. What's the purpose of our calendar? Is it this day-to-day compliance, or is it for oversight? Because that's going to determine, for instance, the number of activities we're going to put in the activity and the level of detail that we're going to put in the activity, or the frequency of the activity. When we're in compliance, an example of that, for instance, hazardous waste inspection, day-to-day compliance, it's weekly, but I might have an oversight, which every month I'm just going to check the records and verify people are completing the records accurately. On the level of detail, if I'm in oversight, it's probably a more experienced person who's going to be asked to perform that activity. But if it's a day-to-day compliance, it might be a non-EHS person, somebody in operations or maintenance. And so I may have to include more detail so that this non-EHS person knows what to do. So here's some examples of how we might look at the content. We could, this is the confined space, we could put the entire section of OSHA in this task. That would be an awfully bulky task. Or we could take the ISO approach, and we'll have 3 tasks: to develop a program, implement a program, and maintain a program. Or we might say, just develop and implement a program that complies with OSHA. That might be too little information. Or we might just say, I want to develop a program, and we're going to include the requirements that OSHA lays out as a table of contents for my activity. So every time I perform this task to review the program, I know what I'm looking for. Now, a compliance calendar is one of 2 tools, and there could be others, but it's one of 2 important tools that are available. The compliance calendar, we're forward looking. We're going to do activities to help head off any kind of future non-compliance. And we want to create the activities so that they're comprehensive, to make sure that that activity, when it's performed, it is done correctly. We can also use compliance audits. They look backward. And backwards, the questions tend to be very, very specific, so that if we raise a finding, that it will be a highly focused finding. There's a balancing act, because if we're going to rely on audits, we need to understand that if there's a noncompliance, we won't find it until after it's occurred. So the question is, are we comfortable with the risk of potential noncompliance? If not, we're going to have a task and put it in our compliance calendar. If we are, maybe we don't have a task and we use an audit to check it. But the bottom line is, by identifying the applicable requirements, we then can identify the compliance tasks and the inspections that we want to be performing on a routine and regular basis that are going to help us ensure, to the maximum amount possible, that we stay in compliance with those requirements. And I think that takes us to our first poll.
All right, great. Thank you, Jay. That was a lot of great information. Yeah, we're going to just do a really quick poll right now. I'm going to go ahead and launch it right now. This is just a single response. So you should see this on your screens now. Question is, how confident are you in your organization's EHS compliance programs? Ranging from very confident, you know what to do, you're sure it's getting done, somewhat. Manage most requirements, but gaps are possible. Not very confident, feeling reactive and inconsistent, and low confidence, unclear on the requirements, and no reliable tracking. So I see the responses coming in here. Looks definitely like a mix. I'll go ahead and give everyone another 5-10 seconds to get those responses in. Then I'll go ahead and share it with the group. All right, thank you. And I'll go ahead and share this. And everyone should see these results now. And as we can see, we have somewhat confident leading the pack with about 62%, and then slightly more people who are not very confident than very confident. And very few people on the call have a low amount of confidence, so that is a good sign. All right, thank you all for sharing. All right, I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to turn this over to Susie.
Sorry there, I was having quite a little issue with the transfer. Hi, I'm Susie. I'm the product lead here at Dakota, and I also have some experience as an environmental program manager. So I have been in your shoes, and I can certainly empathize with what it feels like to be the one carrying the weight of making sure your organization is in compliance. And I know that if you are just now getting familiar with your organization's legal register, or if you are familiar with it and have been struggling to keep up, that big to-do list can feel ambiguous and unactionable. And I'm sure we've all heard the idiom, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think that is a really great analogy for how compliance calendars can help us manage our compliance, because what we're doing is taking that big, seemingly never-ending list of regulations and breaking them down into bite-sized pieces that allow them to become manageable for us. So what I'm going to do is share some tips to successfully manage your compliance calendar once you've gone through the process of setting it up, like Jay was talking to us about, deciding what level of detail is appropriate and what items you'd like to have on your calendar. The first thing you need to do once you have your compliance calendar is to set a regular time to check in. And the most important thing about that is we want to make sure that we're reviewing manageable timeframes, because these tasks aren't going to do themselves. And for most of us, a week or every other week is going to be sufficient. Some of you, depending on the level of detail and the regulations that apply to you, may want to meet more frequently, at least at the beginning, until you have control of things. And some of you may be able to get away with meeting less frequently. The point is, you want to be able to review everything in that upcoming time frame. And during that meeting, you want to make sure you review those items. You think about if there's any prep work involved and how long those things are going to take to complete. Because those are two things right there that can really cause an item to go uncompleted. You pick it up, you didn't realize everything that was involved, and you end up not getting it done that day. Another thing that's good to discuss at that meeting is any delegation or assignment that can be done. I totally empathize again. I know many of you may be teams of one. I know I was for a period of time managing inspections by myself. So delegation wasn't an option for me. But if you are able to, that can really lighten the load. And it can also resolve some of that ambiguity. A lot of us can say, you know, we all knew that task was sitting there and we all thought someone else was going to do it. And that's why it didn't get done. So making sure to discuss and use the tools you have to assign things that need to get done is going to set you up for success. The next thing is to really embrace all that the calendar can do as a tool to help you move beyond what's strictly required. So all of us know when we are out there doing tasks and completing inspections, we are going to find things. We are not in compliance 100% of the time. That's why we're doing the inspections, so we can catch things. So let's say, for example, you're out there doing a fire safety inspection and you notice that the fire extinguishers in your warehouse are expired. You need to note that on your inspection. You are out of compliance. This warehouse is currently at risk if a fire were to break out. You do not have time to deal with this right now. You're in the middle of a warehouse. You might not even be the person who needs to order fire extinguishers. But what you can do is use your calendar to get ahead of the issue. You can put a task on your calendar for yourself or somebody else over the next few days to make sure that the appropriate fire extinguishers are ordered and installed in the warehouse. So now you have ensured that next time you go out there and do that inspection, you do not find the same exact failure. And I know all of us have probably been in that situation. I know I have, where that has happened. We want to use the calendar to get ahead of that. And I want to encourage you to use your calendar to go even one step beyond that and get out of that reactive mode where we're not only preventing the next mistake, but we're going forward. So in this example, what we can do when we order new fire extinguishers is take a look at that expiration date, look way ahead in our calendar, put a task in to make sure that new ones are this time ordered before the old ones expire, and we don't run into that same risk again. We're out of reactive mode, we're into proactive mode by taking a few minutes to go ahead and make sure that the appropriate tasks are on our compliance calendar. And that really goes a long way to reduce risk in our workplace. My next tip here is to keep your eye on the big picture. So as I began talking about, compliance calendars are a wonderful tool for breaking things down. We want to take the big ambiguous list of things we need to do. We want to break it into discrete tasks. We want to further break that down by delegating if we can. We do not want to lose the forest for the trees. We do not want to wander too far down a path that's not working for us. So the main way that we can keep our eye on the big picture is by taking a look at the data that comes out of our tasks and our inspections. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. Some metrics that I think are the most helpful are actually really simple. I want to look at the number of things getting completed. I want to look at the completed on time rate. Are we doing these things on time? As Jay pointed out, with some of these requirements, it matters that they were done on time or not. And I want to look at the results of my inspections. Am I seeing that in general things are fine and issues pop up here and there? Or am I seeing it does not look like we have control over things? We are finding things left and right here. And the reason we want to come up for air from our daily patterns and look at this data is because we might need to course correct. So I have an example here of a dashboard, and if I were the manager looking at this, I would say, it does not look like my current plan is working for me. I am seeing that we're doing tasks, but we are not doing them on time. We've got only 14% of our tasks completed on time. And I would say probably as a result of that, I've got a not great failure rate on my inspections. And I'm thinking that's because we're not getting out there on time. We're rushing through everything and things are getting away from us and we're not finding them until it's too late. So if I was managing this program, let's say, you know what, I have a small team. When we first got our calendar, we thought we don't want to do any extra meetings. Let's meet once a quarter. We'll spend an hour going through this stuff. I get here the next quarter, I see this. I might say, this is not working. Let's not continue down this path. Let's have a shorter 20-minute meeting once a week. Let's look at reasonable timeframes. Let's make sure we're getting things assigned and not all looking at each other thinking someone else was going to do that. And let's come back in a few weeks. And we try out our new pattern and we make sure that we check back in on our data. So in this case, looking at the data has now helped me visualize the impact of my change. I can see here I'm visualizing a win. We are on our way. We're getting more tasks done. We're getting them completed on time. And as a result, we're finding things before they turn into failures on our inspections. So if I hadn't done that, if I had gone ahead with my first plan of a quarterly meeting and I hadn't checked in on the data, I would have missed that. And half a year or a year down the line, I might not be in the place I want to be in terms of safety and compliance. So we definitely want to break things down. We definitely want to keep our eye on the big picture at the same time. So just in summary here, I want to reiterate to you how powerful of a tool a calendar can be when you're working to come into compliance. And the best ways that, in my opinion, to have success with your compliance calendar are to make sure that you are working in manageable timeframes for your team, that you're really owning the process, making the calendar your own, and following up on things that you find so you can get into that proactive mode. And come up for air, stay goal focused, and don't be afraid to experiment and tweak the process until you find what's going to work best for your team. And with that, I will toss back to Bob.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Susie. That was great. So we're going to move on to QA in one moment. First, I just wanted to share a little bit of information about Dakota Software, who we are, what we do, and the details of a new program that pairs our regulatory expertise with EHS management software. For those of, I know we have a lot of clients on the call. For those of you who don't know us, we've been helping organizations of all sizes across industries with regulatory compliance assurance. We began 35 years ago with a solution focused on environmental auditing, and that was really to help organizations test each site's compliance against current and applicable regulations. So while we have shifted to a more forward-looking approach, this concept of site-specific applicability is still central to our solutions and really to our overall philosophy of EHS management. So our key distinction, our secret sauce, if you will, it begins with our in-house regulatory team. So this is a team made up of chemists, engineers, lawyers, and other specialists who continually analyze regulations and refine a library of federal and state requirements. This database of plain language summaries, audit and inspection checklists and questions, compliance tasks, and other content is combined with our clients' local policies, permits, to create a central knowledge base of regulatory intelligence specific to their organization. We are, of course, also a software company, and so our solutions use a patented technology to intelligently map only applicable requirements to the specific facilities and locations. So these resulting compliance profiles then are used to manage activities, track relevant regulatory changes, etc. All right. There we go. Okay, so our proactivity ecosystem integrates this regulatory content into the products. For Dakota clients, you probably recognize brand names of Profiler, Auditor, and Tracer. That's what we're talking about here. So this solution really ideal for higher risk organizations, often those with significant US footprints and or global operations. People who are seeking full visibility, hands-on control for their programs, and these products connect compliance tasks to the underlying regulations and equip people with tools to manage them. Of course, not every organization needs that level of control. Many are looking for a more streamlined way to meet compliance obligations without building out this large infrastructure of compliance management program and tools to manage it. And that's where Compliance Plus comes in. With this program, our experts do the heavy lifting for you, utilizing the proprietary tools that are part of the proactivity ecosystem. They can quickly and accurately build out site-specific regulatory registers and then create recurring tasks and inspection templates ready to be used. So a quick summary, Compliance Plus, no guesswork, no setup. Our experts build right-sized compliance plans, map to your organizational structure for you. The platform itself, easy to use, can be accessed from any type of device, so your team can start managing activities immediately from wherever they are. It provides built-in accountability using alerts and notifications, making sure you're aware of what's coming up, anything that's past due. So leading to what most important is it really centralizes your obligations and gives you confidence that nothing is slipping through the cracks. So now we will go ahead and we will take any questions you have. There's some info on the screen if you're looking to connect with us. And I'm going to also just launch a quick exit poll right now so you can tell us how we did. And as we do that, we'll start taking the questions. Oops, let me see what I did. There we go. Okay. And I can't launch that. Okay, so the first question I see here, how long does the setup take with Compliance Plus? Jay, maybe you can handle that one?
Hardest part is actually developing the regulatory register, but based on the experience, public information, we can have a register to a point we're in the fine tuning stage within a matter of days. And again, once we know the requirements, now we know the tasks and the inspections that are really appropriate. and we can have those ready again within a matter of days. So we're talking just a few weeks and you are operational.
Okay, great. A follow-up question, can we add our own tasks and inspections then? Susie, can you handle that one?
Sure. Yeah, our compliance calendars are flexible and completely allow you to add what you need. So if you have specific inspections you'd like to enter in or tasks you find while you're out there doing inspections, you are completely free to add those to the calendar and assign them as needed.
Okay, and let's see here, another question. Does the platform include a mobile app? Susie, you want to speak to that?
Sure. So our platform is a web app. We don't have a native app, so it's not like an app you would download from the App Store. You would go to the URL, and we've worked with our designer to ensure that the screens will work on your mobile phones and tablets and seamlessly also work on your desktop.
Okay, great. Oh, another question here then. Does your team keep the compliance tasks up to date? Jay, you want to speak to that?
We can be engaged to do that. So it's not offered out of the box with the Compliance Plus, but we can certainly be hired to do a maintenance role.
Got it. Okay. And we will pause just for another minute here if anyone has anything else they want to ask. I know we are just right on time right now, so perfect. But we'll hang out for a second if anyone has anything else they'd like to add or ask. All right, it looks like everyone is satisfied then. So thank you
Okay,
everyone for
man.
attending. I'd like to thank, oh, here we go. Is there going to be an archive version sent out? Yeah, we will definitely share the recording, and we had a couple questions about slides as well. We'll share that information as well. Oh, here's another question. What if a company is servicing multiple clients in multiple locations in different states and industries? Would there be a few days to set up each site, or could a discovery job walk be conducted that would answer what compliance is needed? Jay, that's a big one. You want to tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, when you say the industries, that presumes then that these facilities are very dissimilar. So we would need to, because we do want a site-specific legal register, we would have to get into the details for each site. But we would be using our tools, and there are going to be a lot of commonalities that we can, no matter which site, we can knock off a bunch of stuff that may apply or may not apply. Um, we can also do on-site reviews if that's appropriate. Again, there would be additional cost to do anything on site.
Okay, and then final question here, then, do you offer services to create legal registers, compliance calendars without the software service? I mean, I think no is the answer mostly to that, but we can reach out and learn a little bit more about what you're looking for there. Okay, well, thank you for the questions at the end there, and thanks for everyone to everyone for attending. Thanks especially to Susie and Jay for putting this content together and for taking the time to present. So thanks everyone, and we hope you have a great day.
Well,